Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm sorry to stop all the schmoozing. Very good evening to you all. My name is Michael Newman. I'm the Chief Executive of the Association of Jewish Refugees. Welcome to this event. I'm going to speak in a few moments, but it's now my pleasure to introduce the Deputy German Ambassador, Rüdiger Bonn. Ladies and gentlemen, Rüdiger Bonn.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and Mr. Simpson, Mr. Lucas, Mr. Baddiel, and Mrs. Urbach, ladies and gentlemen. I feel greatly honored to be able to join you here at Westminster Synagogue as German Deputy Ambassador. I would like to start by also thanking Michael Newman from the Association of Jewish Refugees and Toby Simpson from the Wiener Holocaust Library. I'm grateful for their initiative for a joint event focusing on Jewish refugees and their descendants reclaiming German citizenship. And together with them, I thank Karina Urbach, who will moderate tonight's discussion. A special welcome goes out to our very special guests today, Matt Lucas and David Baddiel. I assume they don't need much of an introduction. Both have very kindly agreed to share their thoughts on the restitution of German citizenship with us tonight. And without wanting to give away too much, one of them, Matt, has already gone through the process and is now a German and British dual citizen. And David, so I'm told, is gathering all the necessary documents and is thinking of applying. So I hope that the event may encourage him to do so. We are, of course, not here to discuss the practicalities of the application process, but in case anyone has specific questions on that subject, I have brought with me a number of embassy colleagues who deal with that on a day-to-day basis, and they will be available to talk to you later after the discussion. We are here first and foremost to hear from Matt and David about their thoughts and considerations and reflections prior to and after reclaiming German citizenship, what their views and expectations were and are vis-à-vis not only the process, but also vis-à-vis our country as it is today. And at this point, I'd like to briefly mention the formidable historian Fritz Stern, who wrote a memoir on history of the 5 Germanys I have known. That's the title. And he presented the book also at the embassy at the time. And his engagement with the nation from which he and his family fled, Stern brings to life the 5 Germanys he experienced. In the book, Fritz Stern illustrates Germany's evolution from the Kaiserreich to the Weimar Republic, the Nazi dictatorship, the Federal Republic, and today's United Germany, firmly embedded in Europe. He captures Germany's dark road towards the moral abyss of the Shoah, horror unparalleled by anything either before or since. The book shows how late we were in becoming a liberal democracy. This only happened in the 1950s through a course of firm Westintegration, or integration into the West, helped by the so-called economic miracle, which we experienced as a consequence of the Marshall Plan. Today we are surrounded by friends and partners, and that is how we want it to be. Let me also say that the Jewish community in Germany today has been flourishing and now comprises around 100,000 members. Some speak of 200,000 members, but 100,000 members is a confirmed number, under the umbrella of the Central Committee of Jews in Germany, making Germany the 8th largest such community in the world. For us, the Jewish community is now a fundamental part of our society, a truly extraordinary gift to Germany, born from the wonder of forgiveness, so to speak. With every story told, with every passport issued, every stay in Germany, Jewish life is returning to Germany and taking hold. We are regaining this aspect of our identity, and I am most grateful for that. For me, it is clear that the wrong that was done cannot be undone. This is why I sometimes struggle with the word Wiedergutmachung or compensation. I read it as meaning we should do as much as we can to move in the direction of reconciliation. This is an eternal task, of course. In August 2021, we witnessed the latest amendment of the German National Act. It concerned those victims of Nazi persecution whose citizenship could not previously be restored due to inadequate legal provisions. It had long been overdue, and I would like to thank all the people who helped bring this change about in and for this community. Reclaiming German nationality, given our history, is a huge step. I stand in awe of everyone who takes this step. From a legal point of view, each applicant exercises their right that exists under our Constitution and the Nationality Act. And yet, this is not merely about the bureaucratic procedure. Each applicant is, at least in my eyes, a momentous occasion, a step forward, a step towards our country. And I fully understand if there are people who say, I cannot do this given what happened to my family. Behind each and every person's decision to take this step lies a history of suffering and loss, an experience of fleeing from one's home and struggling to establish a new home elsewhere. In many cases, this new home was Great Britain. I have been told that many felt so grateful to Britain that becoming German might feel like betraying the very country that saved them. Many applicants tell us they feel torn between feeling Jewish, German, British, or even European. Such situations raise many questions. Do these identities necessarily contradict or potentially complement each other? Is it a question of identity? Is Brexit and having an EU passport a practical factor in this, or do the considerations go deeper? And it is important to bear in mind that the application process requires documentation. It requires looking back into the past, which is a painful process, as we are well aware. In many families, this causes a lot of debate. Some family members may support the process, others may oppose it. Every year since 2018, more than 1,500 applicants have taken this step in the UK alone. The German embassy in London is now, alongside our missions in the US and in Tel Aviv, among the top 3 places to apply. The reasons for and against restitutions are numerous and manifold and vary from case to case. Tonight we will learn more about the considerations and motivations that may be involved. I'm looking forward to hearing Matt's and David's thoughts. And yeah, with that I hand over back to you, Michael. Yeah.
Deputy Ambassador David and Matt, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Minister Bone, for your introduction and warm words of welcome. It's a great source of pride for the AJR that we continue to have such a strong and constructive relationship with you and your colleagues at the Embassy. And it's heartening to us that we work so closely together and have the support of senior diplomats and representatives of the German government. We're equally proud of our long friendship and partnership with the Wiener Holocaust Library to jointly commemorate and educate, but also to offer a safe repository for family papers and a place to where refugees and survivors and their families can turn for research. For those less familiar with the AJR, we're the national organisation representing and supporting Holocaust refugees and survivors and their descendants. As part of our primary and overriding objective to deliver social and welfare assistance, we disperse a grant that we receive from the German government through the Claims Conference. Together with our own funds, this enables us to provide transformative help to a unique community. So although tangential to tonight's discussion and proceedings, This is an unashamed request to please let us know about or refer to us any of the first generation who you know who might need some help. But our mission extends beyond this direct support. We are increasingly engaging with the descendants of the refugees and survivors so that the second and third and even the fourth generations can be part of our work to perpetuate the legacies and stories of those who perished and those who survived. We're also a leading benefactor of educational and commemorative projects and programs, working with organizations such as the Wiener Holocaust Library, as well as creating our own resources, such as our interactive UK Holocaust map, for which we partner with the government, and our testimony collections, Refugee Voices and My Story. All of these projects serve to capture, preserve, and spread awareness of the culture, customs, traditions, and the heritage and way of life of pre-war Middle Europa, as well as the contributions of many of the Jewish refugees to their adopted homeland. This evening's event comes on the eve of the anniversary of the Wannsee Conference, when the fate of European Jewry was decided. But the genocide that was put into operation by that gathering of 15 high-ranking Nazis, educated and qualified men, did not begin at Wannsee. The Nazi state-sponsored persecution of Jews began in 1933. Anti-Jewish measures that were enacted included the 1933 denaturalization law and the 1935 citizenship law, while the very identities and rights of Jews and others targeted by the Nazis were curtailed by the Nuremberg laws. Simply put, the Holocaust was predicated on the idea that one could not be both German and Jewish. The final solution was the conclusion of the oppression, but the question of citizenship was at the very heart of the genocide. For many, both then and now, citizenship means much more than just a legal status. It is a concept that is tied deeply to our sense of identity, of belonging, of who we are. That is why tonight's event is not meant merely to look at the practicalities of reclaiming German citizenship, but rather to unpack many of the nuances and complexities associated with it. While the decision to leave the European Union created a huge interest, particularly among the descendants of German Jewish refugees, to reacquire a European status, it also sparked discussions about what it might mean to be German, to become a citizen of the country that persecuted our parents and grandparents, and what they might make of us even considering this option. If there already was a prevalence of guilt and neuroticism, this didn't help matters. But it also led to people exploring Germany, in some cases traveling there and acquainting themselves with Germany today. I'm in the fortunate position of visiting Germany fairly often and working with colleagues there and from the embassy here. And I find a country with a strong culture of remembrance where the crimes of the past are recognized and taught and commemorated. But this is a view many others are similarly finding during their own encounters. It is exemplified by the growing number of Stolpersteine, by Germany hosting and advancing the work of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and through the many exchanges and visits by younger generations. And speaking as someone who has acquired German citizenship and reclaimed my European identity, I'm greatly looking forward to the discussion, insights, and perspectives, and maybe even some disagreements this evening. Just a couple of small housekeeping points. Such is the popularity of tonight's event. It's also being live streamed, so greetings to all those online. And it's also being recorded. So if you want to watch it again, perhaps to make sure you really do disagree with that person who asked the question, we will share the link with you all in a couple of days on our social media. There will also be the opportunity to ask questions, for which we have some roving mics, and we would love to continue the conversations both during the reception that follows, but also online. And if you are online, please use the imaginative hashtag German citizenship. So, we're very grateful to our speakers for making themselves available. Even though they need little introduction, it's my great pleasure to welcome the comedian, presenter, screenwriter and author David Baddiel, and to note the publication of his most recent book and its accompanying TV documentary, Jews Don't Count, and Matt Lucas, actor, comedian, writer, and television presenter, who, relating to this event, featured in the Who Do You Think You Are programme that was broadcast last June. I'm also delighted to welcome Karina Urbach, to whom we're grateful for moderating the conversation between David and Matt, and to congratulate her on her recent book. And I must say, it's an excellent, fascinating publication. Alice's book, How the Nazis Stole My Grandmother's Cookbook. Ladies and gentlemen, David, Matt, and Karina.
Do we have to turn them on? Can you hear us? Oh, good. They work. Excellent. You need water?
No, I'm okay. I'll have some water during it, but I won't start with water.
Would you like some water? Would anyone like some water?
Can I just begin by saying, what a weird gig? I mean, really.
Yeah, especially for me. Okay. We all know that the modern passport system started in the French Revolution. And from the very beginning, it was seen as a curse, but also as a blessing. And if you're Jewish, you're obsessed with passports. You're obsessed with getting the right documentation, getting certificates. All these things have to be in order. And I think tonight, when we talk about passports, we have to talk, of course, about your grandmother and your grandfather and how they lost their passports and had to gain British citizenship, and how thankful they probably were about it. But, of course, we have to ask about motivation first. So what was your motivation to apply for a German passport?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No. First of all, I'm thinking of it, have been thinking about it for about 2 years. Straightforwardly, my first motivation was Brexit, because I don't know if you've been, well, you're German, but if you're British and travelling in Europe, it's annoying to have to go in a very long separate queue. So that was my straightforward practical reason.
Basically, Jews Don't Queue is your next. It's your next book.
That's a good title, yeah.
Is that on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, having found myself queuing, I thought, this is annoying. Never mind what happened to my grandparents, I want the passport. But having said that, I also then, I wrote a piece about it actually for the Jewish Chronicle about the wider implications of it. In my case, my mother was German. My mother was born in Nazi Germany in 1939 and was a baby, and then they just got out with about 3 weeks to go before the war. And she had quite a lot of, she died in 2014, but she had quite a lot of anger and rage towards Germany, and I don't know how she would feel about it. And I'm not entirely unconflicted myself, but I suppose I came to the conclusion, the sort of serene conclusion, that the thing that is better is that if the outrage that happened to my mother and that happened to my grandparents, this is the lesser outrage than their wider family who were exterminated, but the outrage that happened to them was that their citizenship was taken away and they were disenfranchised and they lost everything. Then the right thing to do is for that, in some spiritual way, to come back. In some that it's not right in a way to say, well, I'm just going to, in a way, by continuing to ignore the possibility of citizenship for me and for my brother and for my children, I'm continuing that sundering. I'm continuing what the Nazis started if I'm saying I'm not going to have anything to do with Germany.
Right.
Because that's what they were saying. We don't want you to have anything to do with Germany. So it feels to me like, from that point of view, it's a reparation.
So we get you back. That's very good. So do you think your mother,
Thank you.
Or your grand? Well, I'm glad. I mean, we need good comedians in Germany. We have actually we have
Harsh.
we have.
Also, that wasn't the funniest thing I've ever said. I'll be honest with you.
No.
I don't know.
I've watched
actually watched a lot of your work.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but do you know German comedians? I mean, have you met a few? Because they are your colleagues soon.
Well, Matt's now a German comedian. Let's
Oh
not
yeah,
forget.
okay.
Well, I use the word comedian loosely, but yes.
Yeah, you have met a few, because we are not that bad. We are back to the 1920s with our satire and cabaret.
I've met one German comedian who's a popular comedian in Germany, and also he always dubs me. His name's Oliver. Whenever I'm on screen in Germany,
Oh, Oliver, yes.
he dubs me.
Heute Show. Is he from the? He has not much hair, and is he that one?
No, that's him.
no. Okay, yeah. Oliver,
He had some hair when I met him, but that was about.
He doesn't
12
have to
years
live
ago.
as Matt in order to dub him.
Okay. Okay, but coming
yeah.
back, so this Jewish guilt feeling, would your grandmother approve of what you have done?
Well, no. So I should say that my catalyst was similar to David, which was Brexit, because, I don't know the economic positives and negatives about whether Britain should or shouldn't be in the Union. I'm not clever enough or knowledgeable enough. I don't have a great in-depth understanding of it. But I know one thing, which is that since the creation of the EU, no country within the EU has been at war with any other country within the EU. And that, for me, is a really good reason to stay in it. Because it's not that long ago that Britain was in a war. And there is another war, there are other wars going on right now involving European countries. So to me, it felt almost complacent to leave the Union. And so that really, I don't agree with Brexit, because I don't know enough about it to want it to happen, and I've already explained why it doesn't sit right with me. And so I looked into, was there a way that I could stay in the Union? And then, of course, my grandmother was from Berlin and came and lived here. And so I applied for citizenship and received it, because actually the official line, as I understand it, is that Germany invites people who are eligible for citizenship to come and get it. That's my understanding.
Of course.
So actually what I did was accept the invitation. And it did have me thinking that the Germany of today is not the Germany that...
That's what I wanted to ask you, because you grew up in the...
Yeah, and the Britain of today is not the Britain that my grandmother came to either. And that is not a lack of gratitude from me as someone who's the descendant of someone whose life was probably saved by being allowed to live here.
Can I just interrupt with that, actually?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting point, this sort of lack of gratitude thing, because I don't know about everyone in this room, but despite the fact that Britain has got lots of things wrong with it, I retain an incredible sense of gratitude towards Britain, because we only got in by the skin of our teeth. And there's a sense that, that there is a base tolerance that exists in Britain that may be phantom, I might be wrong about that, but that creates in me that sense. So what I would say is that, I don't know about you, but I do not think that acquiring German citizenship will actually make me any less British.
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to say was when I came out publicly and said, I've been granted German citizenship, it was seen by some as a kind of a rejection of British citizenship, and it isn't that. It is dual citizenship.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me feel any less British.
Yeah, I'm American as well. I don't know if you know this. I'm also American, so I'll have triple... Can I have this? I might have blown it now. But I'll have triple citizenship. But I've never really felt... I'm just American because I was born there, right? And so I've never... So I will feel... I don't know if this blows it as well. I will just feel British, because I always will feel British. But I still think the symbolic value, as well as the practical value of having a passport, is a good thing.
Well, you mentioned this gratitude, and I think the AGR has, of course, many people, and perhaps there are a few here who are Kindertransport people, so who came here in the 39 or 38, and I was wondering whether later on perhaps we could talk about whether you feel differently, whether you wouldn't want a German passport. But it's a generational thing, and I wanted to ask you, when you grew up, at school was there Holocaust education? Because I remember that they called it the Men with Mustaches course, that Stalin and Hitler was taught at school from the 1980s onwards, and before that it was only the Tudors and nothing like Nazi history. I mean, you're a bit older. I think you're the young one.
No need to bring that up.
But we went to the same school.
We did
Oh,
go to
you
the same
went-
school.
oh, right,
We
okay.
did, yeah. I don't remember
So-
the man with the moustaches course. Do
You remember the Man with Mustaches?
No, I don't remember
You
the
don't?
man. No,
Oh, okay.
I don't remember that. I don't remember much in the way of Holocaust education, to be
You
honest.
don't?
You're
No.
not looking at someone who listened to much of what he was taught at school.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Not in depth.
no. I don't think, not in the way, like, one of the things that, because my book, Jews Don't Count,
Yes.
has come out in Germany, just a sidebar while we're here. There's this weird thing that happened, which was in German, the German publisher says we can't call it Juden zählen nicht, which is the literal translation of Jews Don't Count. We can't call it that because of our history. They wrote to me that we thought it'd be too inflammatory because of our history. And for about 4 seconds, I thought, I might just troll him and write back what history? What are you talking about? And see how long it would take before they bring
By the
up
way,
that.
your German book came out with Hanse, which is a very good publishing house.
It's a good publisher,
So,
but what they did, they changed the title to Und die Juden, which means and the Jews, which just sounds creepier and weirder than Jews Don't Count. Why have I brought this up?
Because I wanted to ask you about Holocaust education.
Oh,
Whether
yes.
you had
When
that
I
in
went
your-
to Germany to launch that book, and you can fill me in on this, but it's probably the country that is most, down with, absolutely has Holocaust education as part of its curriculum, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you have this thing that German people are more aware, probably, of the Holocaust than any other nation, particularly young people as well. And that's a sort of amazing thing, and actually made me more conducive to want to get German citizenship, because you may or may not know this, but there's massive ignorance about it in this country and in America and elsewhere. There's still, like, in America, there's like something like 1 in 4 people are completely unaware that it happened, for example.
Yeah, my son went to school in America, and the only thing he learned was about Anne Frank. That was the only, and I think she's related. No, she's not related to you. Anne Frank, there is a connection to your family with Anne Frank.
There is a connection, yeah.
Yeah.
My grandma's first cousin lived with the Frank family in the home that they had immediately before they went to the annex. Yeah.
That's right, because I'm sure you have all seen both of them in Who Do You Think You Are? And yours is the latest episode.
But there was something that you asked me earlier, which I didn't answer, which was what my grandmother might have
Yes.
thought of this. And look, this discussion that we were having about people having different views on this is a discussion that we had in my family, where my mum, who sat there, I asked my mum, and my brother, would you also be interested in applying for citizenship? And they felt that my mum's mum, my grandmother, who was German, would not have been comfortable with any of us getting it, and therefore they both have, at this time, declined to accept the invitation. But so I think possibly my grandmother would have been against it, but there's other aspects of my lifestyle she also would have been against, to be honest with you. And and that's a generational thing as well. And
You can't live your life by what your grandma would
no,
have wanted,
exactly.
is what you're saying.
And that's how I felt. And I do. There's lots of. My grandmother read the Daily Telegraph. I don't tend to read that. There's lots. Although the crossword's wonderful, but there's lots of things where we didn't agree.
Yes.
And that's fine. It's fine. We're living.
Also, it's
sometimes it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
and-
Also, the truth is always complex.
Yeah.
So my grandparents were, they'd had their lives completely ripped apart by this. They were industrialists. My grandfather was an industrialist. He owned a brick factory in Königsberg, now Kaliningrad in Russia, which is a whole other issue because they weren't given that much reparation by the German government because their property ended up in Russia. That's a whole other issue, which I might start a class action about when I'm German. We'll see.
Okay.
But the point is that
By the way, I genuinely, and I could be wrong, I genuinely think the fact that you already have dual citizenship might make it hard, might make your application
Well, then I'm leaving. Why am I doing this gig?
No, please
Does it?
don't.
I could be wrong. Well,
Okay.
I don't know if you can have citizenship of more than 2 countries.
You can.
Oh, you
You
can?
can. I
Well,
think nowadays
I think
you
it's
can.
really important then to disregard anything I say. Because I know nothing.
Sorry,
Carry on.
The complex thing I was going to say is that my grandparents were, furious in many ways or contained all sorts of issues. I think they wouldn't have gone back to Germany during their lifetime in Britain because it was too painful. Nonetheless, they were incredibly German. That's the point I want to make. Obviously, they came here they were middle-aged when they came here. My grandfather never really spoke English properly. He died a man who still believed that Goethe was a greater playwright than Shakespeare. And same with my grandma was a bit more English. Her name was Otti, but she used to tell people her name was Ethel. She wrote to the Queen Mother. I found this there when she died. She wrote to the Queen Mother on the Queen Mother's 90th birthday and got a letter back saying, "Dear Ethel Fabian," and she was so pleased about that. But the point is they were German as well. And so that's something which I think is real about them, if you see what I mean, when I think about them. And if you take out, which obviously is difficult, the immense pain or whatever, I sort of think like the memory of them is still sustained by me taking German citizenship. It lives up to their memory, even if it's something they wouldn't want. That's sort of what I'm saying in terms of what Matt was saying.
Yeah, and when I was younger, I remember even saying to my agent when I started out, if I ever get offered a job in Germany, I don't think I could take it. I don't think I would take it. I didn't get offered a job in Germany, but I don't think I would. I don't know if I would take it because I would be worried about seeing people on the streets and who are of a certain age and thinking, what did they do in the war, and were they the ones who, I would have that problem. And now, just purely practically, to have been any kind of age of responsibility during the Second World War, you'd need to be nearly 100 years old. So I just think, practically, that's not so much of a concern. But it also assumes that people who had some role haven't themselves reflected, and it's like you say, it's complex. It's really complex.
Did German reunification change anything? Because I remember Margaret Thatcher was very much against it at the time, of course, and I think it did change the perception of Germany in Britain.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes I think to myself, what if I had been born as a non-Jewish, or even as a Jewish German, but particularly as a non-Jewish German in a certain part of Germany at the turn of the last century and lived to 80, I would have lived through 2 world wars that were both lost. I would have lived through this division of East and West Germany and maybe not been able to see my family. And sometimes, I'm not saying we should be sympathetic towards our oppressors necessarily, but there is a point where you think just on a human level, how the Germans themselves were radicalized into thinking terrible things and doing terrible things, that they didn't have it so great either.
Well, there's also something else, which is when I went, a lot of things I don't know, but when I went to Germany, and you were talking about this earlier, is that since reunification, there's been a growth of the Jewish community in Germany.
Yes.
Because a lot of the German Jews who are now there have come from the East, have come from Russia. And when reunification happened, Russian Jews who were unhappy in Russia thought, oh, we can now go to Germany. Although some of them apparently, I'm told, experience a certain amount of racism because of their Easternness. They're sort of seen as sort of lesser than it's complicated in ways I don't understand. But there is a stronger, that's why there is a more numerous Jewish community there than there was before unification. Is that right?
In Berlin, we have a lot of people from Israel now. So the young people love Berlin, of course.
Well, they just visit, you mean?
No, they want to stay. So they're staying. So that's, we have a young...
So what, people are leaving Israel to come to Germany?
Yeah.
Wow.
Seriously, yeah.
Okay.
I have a friend who's an Israeli journalist who works from Berlin and writes in German.
Are they dual citizenship?
Sorry?
They're dual citizens?
Yes.
Okay.
They're dual citizens.
But
so,
if we don't return to Germany and then there are just no Jews in Germany, then what? What has been achieved?
No, nothing. That's my point.
Yeah, exactly.
In a strange way, the Nazis have won, if that's what happened. So that's why I think it's, on the whole, if you wanted to look at it in very simple terms, what's the thing that Hitler would have liked least? Me and you becoming German. I would say especially you, because you're gay as well.
My mum doesn't know. I can't believe that.
So you're the revenge.
Just at weekends. Well, obviously Sundays. On Saturday I'm in shul. Sorry, go on.
So yeah, you're the revenge. That's good. And but are you now interested in really becoming German, like voting in Germany, working in Germany? Will you want to, to go to German Jewish
The
synagogue?
key thing to that is learning German, and that's
Yeah.
going to be quite hard. So.
Oh, no, you're clever. And we
Yeah,
have
but
the
I'm not good at languages. I am clever, but I'm not good at
Oh, yeah.
languages.
Okay. Well, the
I'm not
Goethe
clever, but I'm
You're
also
very-
not good at languages. So.
No. But the Goethe Institute is just around the corner.
Yeah.
So you could go, and I'm sure we can finance a course for you. And by the way, I forgot something. The German embassy is organizing this, of course, but the Austrians are also giving passports. So if you're interested, if you have an Austrian background, they are doing exactly the same.
Well, actually, so a friend of mine, his family are here.
Oh, he's
Alan,
Austrian?
can I just ask you this? So have you got citizenship, your family? Okay, so your brother, who's a very close friend of mine, was telling me about this. So it's often very complex. It's similar to what I was saying about my grandparents' city now being in Russia, is that I believe with you it was like some of your family were from Romania, but then it was Germany. I mean, the course of history has meant that different countries that were under German rule before the war are now not. And so how you exactly locate your Germanness in history now is quite complicated.
It is, very. And that's why you need advice like Toby Simpson, who is going to talk about this later. We have, of course, here in London, the Wiener Holocaust Library, and they can help you research your past. And we have wonderful archivists also in Vienna, if you are Austrian or want to find your Austrian heritage. We have the Jewish community in Vienna who's super helpful. And we do a lot to, because I know it is daunting if you want to apply. I mean, was it difficult for you?
To apply?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, lots of documentation you
Yeah,
have to...
so I'm really fortunate in that I have like a secretary assistant who did a lot of that for me, and I'm very grateful to Emily for doing that. So the truth is, I personally didn't have to do a lot, and I know my mum was involved in working with Emily to get the documentation, and also very grateful to Michael as well, who I think helped advise. And so that is where I was just fortunate. But I did find the AJR very helpful, and I found the embassy very helpful, and I think that's what part of this is about, which is it might seem a bit daunting, but actually there is a way through it, and actually there were. Not necessarily for reasons we'd want there to be, but there was a lot of documentation of Jews by Germans.
Exactly.
And the
That's
consequence of that is that, I mean, not for reasons we'd want there to be, but one of the consequences of that is that we're able to use these documents to help us, if we want to, apply for citizenship again.
Because that's something so emotional. I just know because I did that finding out about my family. And when I went to the archive, the archivist at first couldn't find one of my relatives on the list. And for one mad moment, I thought, oh my God, perhaps she has survived. But of course she didn't. So it is very emotional. And that's the worst bit, that you have to go through this, but and
I did go through the journey sort of.
You did. I saw your program. Yeah, that was brilliant.
So I mean, I thanks. I mean, it was the researchers and the directors and the producers that did all the work there, and I just learned. It was a learning experience. Look, this whole thing is complex, and my feelings do change, and sometimes I do feel disloyal, and sometimes it is confusing, but it was a decision I made and I stand by it. And also, Germany is part of the Union, and that is something, it gives me a freedom, just from a practical point of view. I mean, talk about queuing, but I can work now as I was able to before in any European country that was within the Union, and sometimes just as an actor, you do get a job, and can you go there tomorrow? And having that it's like an extra string to your bow. So it does, from that perspective as well, it's useful.
I'm going to say something a little bit contentious, which is I think the process could be easier in terms of the documentation. Well, yeah, I mean, I have a birth certificate for my mother, born in Königsberg in 1939. There's a swastika on it, which, you know, is painful, but there we are. Yeah. But it's a birth certificate. I don't kind of know why I need anything else. There's a whole load of other stuff that is quite hard to get hold of, and I'm not going to suggest this is a bit German, but it's a bit German.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm sure.
Suddenly there's like 20 other
As
documents.
a German, I must say...
Okay, we're very
but,
good.
you know, there
when
are
it comes
embassy
to-
people here. I honestly think that, like, the birth certificate, and surely that can be verified by Germany. Germany will have records.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
You know, they're good at records. So,
Yeah.
so if I have a birth certificate and that can be verified by the German state, oi, why do I need all this other bollocks?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't really
I know it's
know.
not your fault.
I'll pass it on to to the embassy, because I saw your tweet at the time. You said you got some Gummibärchen from the
Yes,
embassy.
Gummibärchen, very nice.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think I got a badge.
You got a badge.
I think I got a badge, a couple of badges. Yes, and it was nice, actually. It was a badge of the Union Jack and the German flag. It's sort of entwined, which was nice.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. A dual citizenship badge.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knew?
Now you want that, don't you?
Well, I want citizenship. I don't just want the badge. Can I be clear?
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to turn up
Get
with
them
my
on
mum's,
eBay, probably.
yeah, with my mum's birth certificate and get the badge. That's what I want. And then I want to be able to play for Germany. It's not too late.
Oh, yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you. Okay, because I don't know anything about football, but I know you are, of course, a Chelsea supporter,
yes.
and you are Arsenal, right? So.
You mean the team at the top of the league?
Okay.
Sorry, I forget. Yeah.
So this is going to be pretty bad for you now.
No, it's good.
No. I mean, with being German now, which team will you support?
What, you mean when England play Germany?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a contentious thing.
It's not England, obviously. Obviously, England, yeah.
Well, no, what I was going to say is my passion as a football fan is for my club more than my national team. So, and I obviously sacrilegious saying that in front of the Three Lions guy. But I enjoy watching international football. I actually don't have a huge sense of jingoism when watching it. So, in fact, I'm more inclined to go, I want the team with most Arsenal players in to win.
That would still be England, though.
Yeah, that
wouldn't
would still be England
Yeah.
at the moment. But
Yeah.
it used to be France.
Right.
So, but no, so it's interesting that. So I was asking myself this question is, do I now support Germany as well? And I suppose Germany are like my second team. Like, if you grew up in Stanmore and you're an Arsenal fan, Watford were your second team. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. So if England play Germany, I would support England, but I'd be okay. If Germany won, I'd still go out and cheer and go, well, you can't tease me, because I won either way.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, Matt. If I were you, not straight after an England defeat.
No, but I did decide that I ought to select a German football team, because I love football so much. So I tweeted that I was looking for a German team.
FC Bayern, perhaps?
And no, not Bayern. I didn't want Bayern to.
Bayern's a bit Route 1.
It's a bit like supporting Man United.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit
because
obvious.
they're rich. I mean,
Yeah,
FC
it's just
Bayern
because they win everything all the time, every day.
So what did you go for?
So I put it out on Twitter and I said, sort of, come and claim me. And the club that claimed me actually was Union Berlin, which they were the first official account. They tweeted me and said, please support us. And
But where are your grandparents from?
from
Berlin.
Berlin.
From
So
Berlin.
it was,
So that
so
makes
actually
sense.
it was,
That's what it should be.
Well, or Hertha, but it was Union that claimed me, and they were very sweet, and they sent me a shirt. And so I hope maybe later this year to go and watch them.
Are they any
go and
good?
watch them
I don't.
play.
Are
Well, they were top of the league,
Oh,
but
okay.
they're not top of the league right now. But I would
Unlike
like to.
Arsenal.
Unlike Arsenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that. But so I thought, I'll choose a German. Well, a German football team chose me, but yeah.
Of course, you wrote about anti-Semitism in football teams, and you, of course.
Well, at football, more at grounds, actually, than in the teams.
Not in the team. Sorry, the fans.
Yeah.
That's a very important part in your book, and where you described this scene at Chelsea, where somebody used the word "yid," and we have, I don't think anti-Semitism is a big problem in German football teams. We had 1 or 2 incidences, but I think you're safe there.
Okay.
But do you think that, anti-Semitism in Germany in general, is that for you a problem, or because
Well,
have you
that's
informed yourself about it, or are you worried about it?
Well, anti-Semitism in general is a problem. It's a growing
Yeah.
problem, and in the last 15, 20 years, and that's why I wrote my book, and because of the internet, and because of the way the world is going, and
Yes.
populism and all sorts of things, anti-Semitism is a growing problem. As far as I understand it, it's a growing problem in Germany as well. One of the things that was really complicated was when I was there promoting my book, which is, of course, about the progressive neglect of anti-Semitism as an issue, and not considering anti-Semitism to be as important as other forms of discrimination. I asked about that amongst sort of left-wing Germans that I spoke to, and some of them said that didn't used to be a thing. It didn't used to be a thing because of the Holocaust remembrance and the teaching. People are so hyper-aware of anti-Semitism that wouldn't be a thing. But they said in the last 4 or 5 years, yes. Partly because of antipathy towards Israel, and partly because of a thing that I wouldn't know anything about, which is that they said that some of them feel that the teaching and sort of awareness of Holocaust memorialization has become sort of slightly static in Germany, that people know about it and they sort of say, oh yeah, that was terrible, and then that's it. There's no kind of actual sense of like, and now we must be careful about anti-Semitism in the present. It's just a memorializing thing. Now, that might not be true, but that's what a few people said to me.
I think it's when we learnt about World War I at school, we didn't connect with it in the way that we connected with World War II. And that's not just because we're Jewish, but also just because it wasn't as recent. And I think probably it's also a consequence of people no longer being able necessarily to talk to their grandparents about what it was like during the war, even in Germany, because their grandparents might not be, people who lived during that time are no longer around. So it just probably feels a bit more distant and remote, and therefore you feel less obligation to, do you know what I mean?
Of course, and as time goes on, as people, as Holocaust survivors die, unfortunately, the actual living testimony, this is, if you talk to people who are involved in Holocaust remembrance, this is a big issue, that's going, and there's nothing more absolutely engaging in a very extreme way to understanding the Holocaust than listening to the testimony of survivors. But unfortunately, we're starting to lose them.
Well, I think that Holocaust education in Germany is very good, but we do have a problem, of course. We have a problem from the radical left and from the radical right. And the radical left, of course, always uses Israel against Jews, and we have the BDS, the Boycott, Diversify, Sanction Israel, a movement that is used by the radical left. And then we have the radical right, and we always had them, and that's they just say the things they said 20 years ago. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of hope, because I have met so many young people and students, and these Stolpersteine, which were mentioned, these stone of remembrance that we have in so many German cities, and they really make people aware of our past. So it's it's a very it's an interesting picture. You will probably, the more you travel to Germany, of course, the more you will meet people and their different ideas about how we cope with our past.
Shall we have some questions?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was dominating.
Don't be sorry.
No, there are 2 people I have to ask. I was told to ask Joe Reinhold and Felix Couchmann about their experiences in applying for a German passport. Could I have Joe, please?
I'm Joe.
Oh,
Hello.
hi, Joe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for letting me share my story and my experiences. So Joe Reinhold, and my family on my mum's side were from Germany. So both her parents and her aunt and uncle as well. So I've written some notes. So I have reclaimed my German citizenship, and it was quite a long, protracted, not an easy emotional process, but I have done it. But actually, I'm very connected, and a strong reason to be here. My great-uncle was the chair of the AJR, and he came over literally 39 after he got out of Sachsenhausen. And his wife, Eva Reichmann, was the director of the Wiener Holocaust Library. And I'm the other logo. I now have German citizenship, so I've covered all three. So I thought I would just share a little bit of their stories. So my uncle Johnny, or Hans, apart from being the chair of AJR, was also the person responsible for, he was a lawyer, for getting the restitution payments. Actually, the process started from Germany to those refugees that had come over from Germany to the UK. And I certainly owe a lot to him for that. And my auntie Lynn, Eva Reichmann, at the Wiener Institute, was the first to collect first-hand testimonies of survivors, of which they have the large collection in the library. So when I kind of eventually decided, okay, I think I'm going to do this, I'm going to look into German citizenship, I started doing research, and there's no one left on that side of the family. My mum's no longer alive, grandparents no longer alive, aunt, uncle no longer, a great aunt and uncle no longer alive. There's really no one to ask, so I really had to get, Google and I became good friends. And it's super interesting. I mean, Matt, I know probably when you were doing your research, you find all sorts of things out. People that you didn't even know existed, secret aunts, great aunts and uncles, and all sorts of secrets going on. But I did find very easily birth certificates, death certificates. I also you have to send off for the naturalization papers when they come to the UK. So I've got my grandpa's oath of allegiance, and when I opened that, that's really emotional to sort of see that when he's claiming his oath of allegiance to the UK. I also found the Berlin phone directory from the 1930s. Would you believe it? And there was my grandpa in it, in his address. So that was really interesting to find out. So my grandpa left in the mid-30s because he was a lawyer, so lost his job very quickly. I sort of clocked what was going on. But Hans and Eva didn't leave until 39. And I said he was in Sachsenhausen. I'm not sure how he got out, but he did. And he came over at a time also part of the Leo Beck group in Berlin. So I finally got to the embassy, middle of COVID, I think it was. And I sat there giving in all my paperwork, which has just taken so long to do. And I was really conflicted. Everything everyone said, I was like, oh my gosh, am I betraying? How do I feel about this? I feel so British. I'm so lucky to be here. But then I thought, but you know what? So Auntie Eva, her whole piece was about reconciliation between German and the Jews, and she did written books on it. And while she was no longer alive, I was like, well, what would she think? And I thought, I think actually she would think I was doing the right thing. However, my brother doesn't agree with me. And the rest of my family, Matt, I think you were saying that as well, they're just not, they just don't understand why I decided to do it.
But I should say they were not critical of me. They were supportive of me. In my family, they just chose not to do it themselves.
Yeah.
But we didn't argue at all, did we? There was no crosswords or anything, but it was just, we just have a different approach, yeah.
I think that's kind of similar, but they're still just sort of quizzical. But I think that's because they live in Israel, so they didn't have the same Brexit stuff kind of going on. But I just thought I would just tell you what happened when I got back from the embassy, because I went straight back to work in a science institute in King's Cross. And I sat down next to a colleague of mine who literally I had no idea she had any Jewish heritage at all. I said, I'm really sorry, I feel really weird. I've just been through the process of getting my German citizenship. I feel strange. I don't understand my feelings. I'm a bit flawed. Sorry, just kind of like, just ignore me today. She goes, oh, I'm thinking of doing that. And I was like, what? And it turns out that I think it's her great-grandfather, was somebody called Bernard Weiss, who was the chief of police in Berlin in the 1920s and the early 30s. And he had sued Goebbels 40 times. and had certainly had to go and then failed. But he started the legal campaign in the early 1930s to use law to bring down the rise of National Socialists. I said, that's really strange, because my great-uncle Hans, he was a lawyer in Berlin in the 1930s, and he used the law to try and bring down. So we put them into Google once again, and they came up in the same article together. And then I turned and I looked at my colleague Laura, and I was like, oh my God, we're sitting next to each other. We don't even hardly know each other. And here we are, all those generations later, sat next to each other, and it just felt fitting. It felt good. So that's my story, and I had the German embassy were fantastic, and very sympathetic is what I would say, and sensitive to the whole process, and I appreciated that.
Thank you so much. So the other gentleman was Felix Couchman, who wanted to... Oh, that's you. Okay. Yes.
Oh, I do now. My name is Felix Couchman. Sorry, stand up. Why should I stand up? Okay, I'll stand up, apparently.
That's your mum telling you, isn't it?
That's your mum, that is, yeah. My name is Felix Couchman. Just a little bit, I've applied but not got my certificate yet, so I will get it. I am eligible. So in terms of going through the process, it's been straightforward because my oldest brother got it, and therefore I will get it. Part of my motivation, I guess, is twofold. My mother came to the UK on kinder transport when she was aged 8. She stayed, she never went back. She married my dad, and we're all here. What was interesting, I never spoke to her really about what she would have thought about it. She's no longer with us, so I don't know what she would think. But from her attitude, she was very tolerant. She didn't blame the Germans of today, as it were, for the past, the passing on the sins of the fathers to the sons. That wasn't part of what she was about. She had a slightly stubborn side, and she would make sure we always drove a VW Beetle, and she played Wagner very loudly and things like that. But that was her kind of finger up to the Nazi past. The other thing I wanted to say in terms of motivation for me, I'm doing it for her. I'm doing it for all the family members who didn't survive. And also my grandfather is a big motivation. He was First World War air fighter pilot. He fought for Germany, very brave, for a country that he loved. Didn't stop him going to the Buchenwald, being put there. He was lucky enough again to escape with his wife and my mother and her brother as well. But he went back. He went back as soon as he could, and he spoke to organisations, Jewish organisations, and they said, don't go back to Germany. And he ignored that, and he went back. And he did that for two reasons. One, because he told his family he would go back, and secondly, resonating what the deputy ambassador had said, he wanted again to put his finger up to the Nazis and say, no, there will be Jews in Germany again. We will have businesses, we'll get them back, we will have babies, we will have families, and we will grow. And that's what he did. And that's really, I'm applying. I don't feel particularly German. I don't feel German at all, to be honest. But there's that resonation there, and I'm doing it for them and in their memory.
Thank you so much. So now the floor is open. Lots of questions. Oh God, where can I start? The gentleman on the right here, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name's Simon Byrne. My late father was Kindertransport from Koblenz. His parents were deported to Auschwitz and didn't survive. About 10 years ago, I decided, so before Brexit, I decided to apply. And there were two reasons. Firstly, going back into my family history, there have been Bernds in Germany and Fuchses in Germany going back. I can trace one branch of my family back to Rabbi Meir van Lochenberg in the 13th century. So German Jew is who we are. Yeah. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And the barbarism of Nazis isn't going to wipe that connection of hundreds of years of my family in Germany. So I thought, right, I'm going to do for it. And the other is football. because my grandmother's younger brother, Gottfried Fuchs, is one of the only two Jewish players known to have played for Germany. Not only that, he still holds the record for the most number of goals scored by one German footballer in one international match.
How many?
10.
Wow.
Oh.
That was against Russia at the 1912 Olympics. The Russian Tsar, by the way, was so annoyed, he made the Russian team pay their own fares back from Stockholm. And that's something I wanted to reclaim, and to say not only was he a German football player, he was a German-Jewish football player. And the only other German-Jewish football player that's known about is Julius Hirsch, who's on the Chelsea mural you probably see every week.
Yeah, but actually you make a really good point there, I think, which is, of course, you know, Germany, before the Nazis, had a huge culture of German Jews contributing in all sorts of ways, whether not just obviously through the Jewish community, but generally to the wider German culture of sport and literature and art, and all in a huge way. And so, yeah, why not reclaim that rather than deny it, which you do a bit by saying we won't reclaim German citizenship? I agree with that. It's a really good point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, my great-grandfather was a doctor in Berlin, and he served for the German army in World War I.
My grandfather also served for the German army in World War One.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So did my grandfather.
Yeah. So they did their bit. They did a lot for Germany.
Yeah.
And you definitely deserve to get that back. So there's another question. There was another gentleman here. Oh, yes, that's right.
Thank you very much. I am the son of, I'm second generation son of German Jewish refugees to this country. I visit Berlin very frequently. I'm very fond of German culture and so on. I'm just a little baffled. I was listening very carefully to David and to Matt. Exactly what your motivations are for claiming German citizenship. Great if you want to go and live there. That's absolutely fine. And also there's the issue of Brexit and moving around Europe, and perhaps there should be some facility for having EU citizenship rather than German citizenship. But in your initial discussion, all you seem to say as regards reasons for having German citizenship, apart from the Brexit issue, were that you were honouring the culture of your grandmother, and that also I forget what the second reason.
What I said was that the denial of citizenship.
Yeah,
that
and also
to them,
would be
rather than saying
satisfying Hitler. Hitler
yes,
would
exactly.
have won.
Yeah.
But is this not really what it fundamentally boils down to? If you want to have German citizenship without living in Germany, which is a completely different issue, sympathetic to anybody who wants to go and live in Germany and have German citizenship, your fundamental motivation is one of, you believe very, very strongly that by taking out German citizenship, it's a matter of reconciliation with Germany.
It's not really
no,
what
he's
you
not
said.
what I say that.
Yeah.
I'm saying whether that's
no,
really...
that's not how I would see it, really. I mean, I don't know if that's in the frame, really. It's not that I wouldn't reconcile with the modern Germany, who I don't hold responsible.
No, exactly.
But I don't hold the modern Germany responsible for the crimes of 1930s Germany. So,
Nor were the crimes of 1930s Germany committed against you.
No, but they were committed against my mother.
Finally... The number of the point is, I still remain baffled. Unless you want to live in Germany, which is a perfectly reasonable aspiration, I still remain baffled as to why...
Let me stop your bafflement.
Yeah,
right?
Please do. And if Matt could also stop my bafflement,
there's a practical reason.
I will be great.
Well, Matt added another practical reason. Yeah. There's two practical reasons. One is travel, and the other is being able to work in Europe. Yeah. And EU citizenship does not exist. So while it doesn't exist, those are very, very powerful practical reasons. Beyond that, if you are thinking about the practical reasons, which is the primary way into this, you then have to think about the emotional underbelly of that. And the emotional underbelly takes a while to get around, because you think like, well, these are practical things, but am I still, distant from Germany because of what they did? And then you start to think about, well, that seems a slightly immature way of thinking about it, because there's a symbolic thing where you think like, well, it's not helpful in the way that you might think about what happened to your family to carry on sundering, carry on putting distance between yourself and the modern state. Now, I don't think that necessitates a need to go and live in Germany, which would be a huge upheaval of your life. So it's really just a practical thing underpinned by a symbolic way into why this is okay. It's not okay for everyone, as Matt's brothers have said, but I think that's the way into thinking about it.
And it's also about having more freedom. You know, I now do have the freedom to go and live in an EU country again if I want to.
No, I fully agree.
So there's all sorts of, I mean, you know, there's someone in my life who's, you know, who I'm very close to, who's from another EU country, and, you know, I might want to spend time there with him. You know, there are certain personal things I haven't necessarily told you, but there are, it's about freedom as well. But it is definitely not any rejection of anything to do with the UK. It definitely isn't. I have not renounced my... No, okay. And yes, I don't know. Maybe one day I will will have a home in Germany. I lived in America for 7 years, you know, and had I stayed there for longer, maybe I would have become an American citizen as well. But I believe in the EU, and that was my way in to it. Yeah.
Okay, there's so many questions, and I just got the signal that I have to hand over very soon. Yeah, can we have one more? Wait a second. Do we have lots of men? Are there any women?
Woman, there's one at the back.
Could I have a woman, please? Yes, thank you. Could I? Yeah. I don't want to discriminate, but we only had one woman so far.
Okay, well, that's great to have an advantage to be a woman. Anyway, I wanted to ask you a non-citizenship related question. Many years ago, I interviewed the actor Andrew Sachs, who was a great British comedian, but he was also a refugee from Berlin. And he said he found that it was an advantage to have a refugee background to be a comedian, because he was sort of sitting on the edge, as he called it, and he could use it for comedy. So what I wanted to ask you, whether you feel your background helped you on stage and in your work.
I think that being Jewish is enough from that point of view. I do. I think that being Jewish, in terms of comedy, is a useful thing to be, because Jews are kind of assimilated, but kind of not. Jews are always sort of in the culture, but they've got one foot outside the culture, and that's quite a good thing if you want to observe it and subvert it and make fun of it. So I think that would be enough. But being a refugee probably helps as well. But I don't think of myself as a refugee. That was my mother. I didn't feel, you know, it doesn't actually take very long, despite the huge rupturing that happened to her, for, you know, she built a life with my dad and whatever. It was a mad life, but that's a whole other story. And we were British, you know, we had a British upbringing, so I didn't feel a refugee, but the Jewishness was enough to create the difference, the slight difference that I think helps.
Perhaps I should add that there were lots of Jewish comedians who went to America and who came back after the war, and like Friedrich Thorberg, for example, the satirist, or Georg Kreisler, and they came back to Austria because they couldn't live without the coffee houses. So I can understand that if you have to live in America and you miss the culture. So
the coffee is terrible there.
The coffee house in Vienna? Oh,
no,
yeah,
in America.
In America.
Yeah,
awful.
terrible.
Yeah,
Rubbish.
I mean,
yeah. It's much better in Vienna.
Yeah, of course.
And the pastry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I would love to take more questions, but I was told to hand over to Toby Simpson, who is the director of the Wiener Holocaust Library, and who can tell you the really important bits, where to get archive material.
That is the really important bit. What a fantastic event to have the privilege of wrapping up. So.
Thank you very much, Toby.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And one of the best things about it is it's been such an informal chat. I'm going to keep my remarks very informal. I want to start with 3 thank yous. And of course, the first thank you is to the speakers, who have been absolutely fantastic. We have given you a round of applause. I don't know if we should give you another, but the second thank you we should definitely give a round of applause to. And that is to this venue, which has been an absolutely beautiful place to have this discussion. So I want to thank everyone who works at Westminster Synagogue for helping to put on such a fantastic event. And then the third thank you goes to the partners, the embassy, the AJR, and everyone who works at the Wiener Holocaust Library. A lot of hard work has gone into this. Deborah Barnes, Susan Harrod, Samantha Delure, many, many more that I could mention. It really does take a village to put this together. And the German embassy is actually the library's first continuous public funder and has been funding us for decades. So I want to say a big thank you to them for that. And absolutely, yeah. And also the AJR is one of the major funders of the Wiener Holocaust Library's work and is our oldest partner. The AJR and the Wiener Holocaust Library have been working together since 1941, which I think is just an extraordinary thing. What a wonderful relationship. Thank you to the AJR. So then 3 more things I want to tell you about the Wiener Holocaust Library. We are here to help you, especially if you're thinking of applying for German citizenship. And we're hoping that in a way you're here to help us as well, because these documents that turn up in the course of this process are valuable. They are part of the record of the Holocaust. They will be useful to future generations for all kinds of reasons that we can't even predict now. And people aren't necessarily aware of that. They don't fully, but it's a process of appreciating the value of these documents, each of which give a unique perspective on this history. So the library has over 1,000 collections of family documents, and that reflects the trust that the community has had in the library over many decades. This was an institution begun by a man who led anti-Nazi information gathering in the 1920s, Alfred Wiener, who came to Britain in 1939, whose own family was torn apart by the Holocaust, and he kept working right up until the very end of his life, building up this extraordinary collection, which is the world's oldest Holocaust archive, and one of the most important in the world as well in terms of its record. And we have begun to appreciate this amazing cultural treasure that we have in Britain, but it's taken a long time, and I think there's still some way to go. So if you haven't been to Russell Square to visit the Wiener Holocaust Library, arrange your visit, come along, and if you do have documents, please bring them to us. I just want to talk about the what, the how, and the why very, very briefly. What is the Wiener Holocaust Library? It is the largest archive in Britain. It's based in London, in Russell Square. It is. We have a really dedicated, well-informed team, and that brings me on to the how. We can help you to research your family's past, to find other resources to assist you in processes of research, to access our wonderful, beautiful reading room and exhibition space. It's a place for learning, for connecting with people. And then that brings me to the why. I think we'd all agree in this room, it's more important than ever to confront Holocaust denial, challenge anti-Semitism, and we are the most extraordinary toolbox of resources that is here for all of you. So we want you to come and visit us, engage with us, and help us build this crucial library of record of the Holocaust. So thank you very much for everyone who supports the Wiener Holocaust Library. We really appreciate it. And now it is time to invite you to gather in a reception, which we have some drinks and refreshments for you, and that is downstairs just to the left when you get to the bottom of the stairs. But I do think it would be remiss of me not to conclude by saying once again, what a fantastic event. Thank you to all our speakers.